I'm Sebastian St. James. Today you will be kidnapped, but fortunately you have enough money to pay the ransom. But the question is, how much money should you have in your emergency fund, and can the two-bucket system actually help? You probably think I'm making this whole thing up about being kidnapped. Oh yeah, sure, I'm going to get kidnapped today. But I'm not. In a previous video, one of my viewers said, I wonder if the cash bucket would protect you in the event you had an unforeseen expense, like a health issue, emergency, or a kidnapping with ransom. See, I'm not making this up. Instead of selling down investments, you could use the extra cash as a buffer if it corresponds with a down year. To which I replied, I know I'm always getting kidnapped. This sounds more like an emergency fund scenario. And then Elmo got excited. Use the same principles you apply to an emergency fund. I like the sound of that. Maybe put that on your list somewhere, SSJ. This is Elmo, and here's one of my channel members. Elmo has a powerful staff. I suspect on weekends Elmo roleplays being a wizard. Gandalf the Grey's what I hear. Shh, but you didn't hear that from me. Elmo saves $1,000 per month. He keeps 3 years' worth of savings in cash. That's a cash bucket we were talking about. And invests the rest in stocks. In an emergency, Elmo withdraws from stocks in an up market, right? And then withdraws from cash in a down market, right? This is Gorov, and he's my brand new channel member. Oh, how exciting. Hello, Gorov. And if you'd like to be featured in my videos, just become one of my channel members. Gorov keeps no cash in his emergency fund. I know, it's pretty brave of him, so what does he keep instead? Well, he saves $1,000 per month, exactly the same as Elmo, but he keeps 100% in stocks. In an emergency, not surprisingly, he only withdraws from stocks because he doesn't have any cash to start with. Two different emergency fund strategies. The question is, which strategy reigns supreme? To find this out, we need to simulate the two strategies, a head-to-head competition, not only to see which one wins ultimately, but which has got the better ride, and which one may be a better option for you. This is the ASX 200 total return plus franking credits over the last 10.4 years. So this is the data we'll be using, 100% Australian data. This is the high interest savings account interest rate over the last 41.1 years. Wow, that is impressive. In other words, your best account at your bank, that's the interest rate which you'll be able to get. So let's start building. Our simulation is going to simulate every single day for an entire 30-year period. Yes, I know, impressive. Step number 1, we save $1,000 per month. Right, got that. Into the simulator it goes. This is Gorov, which is in 100% stocks. Okay, so that's who we're simulating. Each one of these jump ups is a 1-month period, and he's added $1,000 to it. You can see he starts off with $1,000 in month 2, he's got $2,000, and so on. That's straightforward. Elmo, not so much. He keeps up to 36k worth of cash, that's 3 years worth of savings, and the rest he puts in stocks. Wow, okay. With Elmo we have to simulate both. In blue, that is Elmo's cash. It starts off the same as Gorov. $1,000 a month goes in until the account builds up to the magical figure of $36,000, and then what happens? We stop adding to the cash, and then the red line, which is shares, that then starts to grow. That makes sense. The money's gone in. Now, how do we actually simulate the growth? We use a randomly sampled historically accurate daily returns. We have the real historical data of the ASX 200. We randomly sample that, and that means that the data will be identical as far as frequency distribution is concerned. It is the market rearranged, and hence you get a market with exactly the same properties, but it's a random variation of that. But there is a problem. In my perfect world, the stock market would be open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's right, it would never close. But in the real world, that's not what happens. The stock market apparently needs to sleep. How limited of it. So, how many trading days are there in a typical year? In 2022, the ASX was open for 251 days. The New York Stock Exchange, 251 days as well. That's interesting. And in that year, there was 365 days. We'll be accurately simulating that, so we won't be growing our simulation every day because the stock market is not open every day. Instead, for every 365 days, we'll be growing our simulation for 251 of those. And here are the results. This is a share market with $1,000 going in every month, and then we grow it identically to how the real stock market grows. Stocks, tick. Now what about the cash? We simulate the cash growth based on the historically accurate HISA, high interest savings account samples. Okay, so it's the same as the shares. But importantly, the high interest savings account interest and stock returns will be sampled from the same dates. Aha! But unless your bank is very different to mine, it's not actually paying you every day. No, your bank doesn't pay you every day. It calculates interest every day, but it pays you once a month. So we'll simulate cash growth based on historical HISA samples, but we'll add it in once a month. This is what cash looks like with no interest at all. It goes up to $36,000, which is our plateau, and well, that's it. And it did that on May 1st. Memorize that date, it will become important. Here's the same graph, but this time we've actually added in the interest. It goes up again, March 30, so it's reached its target 1 month earlier than without interest. And you notice afterwards it's a bumpy line, because the interest is credited and then we whisk that money away and put it into stocks, so it's never a perfectly flat line, which proves interest is actually being added. Our emergency fund is done. All the inputs, which means the money going in and the growth in shares and cash, is actually in. So what does it look like so far? In the blue line is Elmo, which has a hybrid portfolio. In red, 100% stocks, which is Gorov. They start off fairly closely together and then they grow, and then the 100% stock portfolio wins. Hooray! But look, the hybrid portfolio is not too far behind. It should come as no surprise to you that if you keep part of your portfolio in cash, it won't perform quite as well as 100% stocks, and that's what we saw. Ultimately, though, that may not be a problem, because it is the hypothesis of Elmo and Steve that by keeping a certain amount of cash will actually protect you in those down years. So, withdrawals. Apparently we need some. What are the rules? If stocks have gone up, then we withdraw from stocks. If stocks have gone down, no, we don't use those. We protect ourselves by withdrawing from cash. What do you mean if stocks have gone up or down, Sebastian? Over what period? Over the last 12 months. In the case of Elmo, though, because he has a hybrid portfolio, if he's supposed to be withdrawing, say, from cash in that particular year, what happens if he runs out of cash? What does he do then? Well, the rest has to come out of the shares. It's now time to simulate, to simulate, to simulate. The question is, will 100% stocks reign supreme, or will the cash actually protect you in the down years and you'll do a lot better off in the hybrid portfolio? Well, let's see. The simulation has started. Okay, this is for real this time. In the green is 100% stocks. That's a wiggly line that's slightly above everything else. That is Gorov's option. The yellow line, which actually represents cash, or the total of cash and stocks. Look down the bottom, no shares at all, so the total is just cash. Elmo and Gorov has signed up for a baking competition, which to me makes sense because they both think their brulees are a national treasure. But there is a problem. Somebody didn't read the entry form properly, and it turns out that baking competition is for clowns. So they both have to buy brand new outfits. Don't they look delightful? The clown chef's costume costs $5,042. Wow, okay. Which apparently they haven't budgeted for. I know. So that comes out of their emergency fund. And here it is. Yes, it's plummeting. And right now, both portfolios are running neck and neck. We jump forward in time to 1.9 years. So that's the emergency that we just saw, and since then we've grown, and who's in front? Well, it's 100% stocks in green. It's an emergency. Steve would like to have a health issue. All right, Steve. It turns out that Elmo and Gorov are actually best friends in real life. Who knew? And they've decided to get matching rose tattoos. The only problem is it turns out they're both allergic to tattoo ink. What a disaster! Naturally, that ink all has to be removed. And that's going to cost them $7,855, which comes from their emergency fund. Right now, 100% stocks is winning. Okay. And you notice that Elmo is still in cash because he has not reached his threshold of $36,000. We've jumped forward in time. It's now 4 years. For the first time, Elmo's actually maxed out his cash. That's the blue line. It's now starting to go horizontal. Down the bottom is shares. And for the first time, Elmo's starting to throw some money in and grow his shares. About time. The orange line is the total between the shares and the cash. Very good. That's all making sense. Since ChatGPT has hit the scene, Elmo and Gorov are convinced that AI is about to take over the world. And there's only one solution. They must simplify their life immediately. By becoming Amish. Because after all, what could be simpler than learning to drive a horse and buggy for the first time and taking up farming when you've never done either before in your entire life? The Amish horse and buggy costs them $20,442. Actually, that's not too bad. Which comes out of their emergency fund. Okay, let me see the damage. Elmo, who had just started growing his share portfolio, no, there aren't enough shares, so of course the balance comes out in cash, and it's gone down, and now only cash is remaining. Gorov's portfolio of 100% stocks is actually winning. It's out in front. We've jumped forward in time to 9.2 years. Gorov's portfolio is winning, but you see with Elmo, he's finally got more stocks than cash. Oh, okay, he's doing rather well. It turns out that growing your own root vegetables and singing "Bringing in the Sheaves" gets old really quickly. So Elmo and Gorov formed their own tech startup, designing a phone to compete directly with Apple. Good luck, boys. I can't see anything possibly going wrong with that idea. The tech startup cost them $56,994. And that comes out of their emergency fund. Okay, let me take a look. All shares are sold off. Oh, poor Elmo. He's back to 100% cash. And Gorov is winning in 100% stocks. We've jumped forward in time to 10.6 years. Elmo's back to buying shares, although he's got fewer of those than cash, and the 100% stock portfolio is beating the hybrid. Their tech startup has got their first customer ever. Hooray! What do? Well, we throw a party. So they've hired some models, which has cost them $16,518. Oh. That comes out of their emergency fund. Yes, of course it does. And whilst Elmo had to sell down most of his shares, he didn't have to go all the way. Okay, that's good news, and so therefore no cash was used. We've jumped forward in time to 13.4 years, and stocks is beating the hybrid portfolio. When you have a startup and you become successful, you get a lot of attention, but it's the wrong kind. Steve wants some kidnapping with a ransom. And so the boys end up being kidnapped, but the problem with being kidnapped is you're missing out on your vitamin D. Studies have shown that 2/3 of abductees are actually vitamin deficient, so pay your ransom and get out of there. And that will cost them $72,561. That's not cheap. Which comes out of their emergency fund. All shares are sold, which means Elmo's back now to cash. And the hybrid portfolio is languishing, whereas 100% stocks, well, look, it's been decimated, but it's still winning. We've jumped forward in time to 18.5 years. Straight up stocks is still winning, but Elmo is back to holding some shares, so congratulations. Being kidnapped is stressful. I know, it happens to me every week, and therefore the boys have to blow off some steam. By going skiing. Apparently there was more sitting than actual skiing. And that trip cost them $16,078. It's just a little blip, actually. Elmo just used stocks because, of course, it's been an up market, and he leaves his cash alone. We've jumped forward in time to 19.6 years. Well, both portfolios are growing, but you see the hybrid is actually now well behind Gorov's 100% stock portfolio. It's Elmo's birthday. Hey, congratulations, Elmo. But unfortunately, nothing has been planned. What a disaster. But it turns out Elmo loves Star Trek and horseback riding. Unable to make up his mind, he decides he wants to do both at the same time. And the Trek riding, as we're now calling it, will cost him $32,000. Wow, that's one hell of a birthday party. That comes out of their emergency fund. Elmo didn't have to touch his cash, that all came from shares, but the 100% stocks is still winning. At the moment in our simulation, I'm starting to notice a distinct pattern. The system that Elmo and Steve came up with was to protect themselves in down markets, and this is how they did it. In good times, you withdraw from stocks, in bad times, you withdraw from cash. The emergencies in my scenario are actually generated by random. They're generated by code. So when they occur as random and how much they cost is completely random. So I have no way of knowing what the market is actually doing during that period, but these are the results. In yellow, I've highlighted the times when the market was going down, and in white, when the market was going up. Oh, Sebastian, the market's been going up virtually the entire time. Yes, that's right. Hence, we've been drawing down on shares the bulk of the time. The question is, how realistic is this that the market is going up most years? Well, let's take a look. Here are the results of the ASX 200. This does not include franking credits or dividends, so the results could even be higher. In yellow are the down years, which are exactly 2. The rest are all up, which is exactly what we found in our simulation. Alright, so I'm starting to zoom in on this. We're carrying cash because we want to protect ourselves against the down markets. But the majority of the years, the market's actually not going down. So we're carrying that protection, but we're not getting to use it. In a sense, this operates like real insurance. It ends up costing you more than the protection it offers. You've seen how the simulation works. Now let's jump right to the very end and see what the final results were. And here are the results over 30 years, accurately simulated every single day within that 30 years. First thing I noticed, 100% stocks definitely won, and that's in green. In yellow, well, it actually did fairly poorly. But I also noticed in red, which is the shares, they were sold down to zero all the way many times. This means that the hybrid portfolio ended up being cash heavy because the shares kept getting sold down all the time. And you can see, even after 30 years, Elmo ended up with no stocks at all. And you might think, well, Sebastian, you're carrying far too much cash. Well, remember, it was only $36,000 worth. The advice typically given for an emergency fund is to carry 6 months worth of expenses up to potentially 2 years. So $36,000, we're right at the lower end of that. In green, the 100% stock portfolio had the best chance of growing. Why? Because it was all in stocks. And cash robbed the hybrid portfolio of its potential growth because the amount of time Elmo was sitting in shares was, well, not a lot. So it ended up being mostly a cash-only portfolio. We've simulated 30 years, but how much did they both earn at the end? The hybrid portfolio returned $36,000. 100% stocks returned $156,000. Wow, such a massive difference. Let's declutter the graphs by showing just the totals. In red, we see Gorov's 100% stocks. In blue is Elmo's, and yeah, it just never really did very well. It started off okay, but then it just basically was a spiral down to nothingness. Over those 30 years, Elmo's CAGR, compound annual growth rate, was 12.7%, which actually sounds pretty good. But of course, we're adding $1,000 in extra every month, and so we're not just looking at growth here. But Gorov's was 18.4%, so the difference is what, 6% a year? Yeah, that's rather substantial. So what have we learned? The stock market goes up most years, not down. Carrying cash as protection sounds like it might be important, but when we realise that the bulk of years you're actually hurting yourself rather than helping. But carrying cash has a growth opportunity cost. If the stock market was going down 50% of the time, carrying cash as protection probably would make a whole lot of sense, but it's not. It's going down, say, 1 out of every 7 years, and therefore the other 6, the cash is just an anchor on the portfolio, and it's not protecting me at all. Based on the results of our simulation, carrying cash cost our portfolio $120,000. Elmo, $36,000. Gorov, $156,000. Carrying cash in your emergency fund is likely to cause you to underperform in most years. But if having cash is right for you as a form of insurance, then you do you. My job isn't to tell you how you should run your life, but my job is to give you the honest and fair data. In our simulation, the hybrid portfolio struggled to break free of cash, and we spent many years with more cash than shares. Most of the time, the blue line, we had enough cash, but the red line in shares, a lot of the time, we didn't have any shares at all. Oh, I just got a thank you from Jay Van. Thank you very much, Jay. Do you know when you buy US shares, there's a hidden cost? What is that cost? How do I find out about it? Click here to find out, or if you've seen that, click here.